Last time I spoke to you, we were talking about John Wimber. Well, he introduced me to an extraordinary prophet whose name was Paul Cain. Some of you may have been in London when he first came. I heard him first when he spoke to quite a large gathering in London. And he was a prophet. You may have read Jack Deere's rather famous book, Surprised by the Voice of God, where there are many references to his prophetic role. Extraordinary man who was able to bring prophetic utterances and words about details in connection with people's lives, often in kind of riddles, which I thought, wow, strange riddles. And then I read an article by Alec Motyer, a great Old Testament scholar, who talked about the prophets speaking in riddles. And of course they did. Jeremiah, Isaiah, even get the riddles referred to in the story of Samson. And parables are kind of riddles. And he would kind of give a name that rhymed with another name, and extraordinary things. He came on a tour of churches across the UK, mostly Church of England. He came to us in Brighton, and it was a leaders gathering, and I was so looking forward to hearing him give particular words to individuals, but it didn't happen. And then towards the end of the evening, he was obviously very tired and a bit frail, and he suddenly said, "This is an apostolic movement. This is a movement of significance. You are going to change the expression of Christianity around the world." An amazing word he brought. I think he actually brought that word to other settings too, aware that God was doing something fresh in his church, and some groups had part of that role to bring about that change. I think probably the most dramatic experience I had was when I was in Kansas City once, in Mike Bickle's church. I was a speaker, but he was a speaker. And actually he was not a very good speaker. Carol Wimber used to joke that listening to him preach was like paying your dues for what came later. But at one point, he stood and began to prophesy. And it must have been over half an hour. And there were kind of shrieks of laughter, sometimes people in tears as he named people and gave details to them. And at one point, he said, "Terry and Wendy Virgo, would you stand?" And we're just in a crowd at that time. There were 2,000 people there. And he didn't know us. I was just a speaker. He didn't get to know me. But he amazingly named all of our 5 children and said quite specific words about them, about Ben. And this is about Anna. He says, Anna has a South African in her heart. I thought, how does he know Anna lives? What does she mean, South African in her heart? Well, she's married to that South African, lives in Cape Town now. She was single at the time. He went on down the list, Simon, who was doing very badly at the time, my son Simon, and suddenly his whole voice tone changed to, "Simon, Simon, Satan's desired to have you. He might sift you." And he gave an amazing word about Simon being in some kind of bondage at the moment, but God will bring him back. And they gave us a tape at the end. They gave everybody tapes that he prophesied over, and so we often listened to that. It gave us courage to keep praying for Simon, who came back to God wholeheartedly. It was an amazing gift. A real sense God knows, God's here, God speaks. The Bible tells us to covet to prophesy. I'm so grateful for key prophecies. New Frontiers wouldn't have existed without John Grove's prophecy. Major moves, the closing of Stoneleigh, prophecy, things came from the presence of God. I love the Bible. I love feeding on the Bible. But I love the gift of prophecy. The Bible says, covet to prophesy. Let's keep asking God for this supernatural addition to the wonder of the Bible in all its authority.